Hey guys, tonight we're stepping through a different kind of doorway, one made of vermilion lacquer and guarded by silent stone lions. You're not in your cozy bed anymore, not exactly. Instead, you find yourself within the vast, echoing walls of the Forbidden City, the air heavy with the scent of sandalwood incense and the hum of unseen activity. You're a concubine now, one of hundreds, maybe thousands, and your entire existence revolves around one man, the Son of Heaven, the Emperor. This is a world of immense luxury and immense loneliness, a gilded cage where a single misstep can mean a fate far worse than death. You probably won't survive this, not in the metaphorical sense of your modern mind intact, anyway. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you are right now, what time it is for you. Maybe someone else out there is falling asleep at the exact same moment. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You awaken not to an alarm, but to the soft rustle of silk and the whispered prayers of your personal maidservant. The sun, a pale pearl behind the thick, carved paper screens of your chamber window, has only just begun to touch the rooftops of the imperial palace. The room is opulent, of course. Everything here is. A four-poster bed draped in embroidered tapestries, a dressing table with mirrors of polished bronze, and the faint, sweet smell of last night's incense still clinging to the air. You've been here for a few months now, long enough to know the routine by heart, but not long enough to have lost that constant, low-grade anxiety that hums just beneath the surface of everything you do. Your maid, a young girl named Xiao Mai, helps you rise. Her movements are quick and practiced, and you barely need to think as she guides you through your morning ablutions. You splash your face with water from a basin, it's always lukewarm, a detail the palace staff prides themselves on. Then comes the dressing. This isn't just about putting on clothes, it's a full-on theatrical production. You start with the fine, silken undergarments, layers upon layers, all designed to create a specific silhouette. A simple day dress for a lower-ranking concubine might be pretty enough for a red carpet today, but here, it's just the baseline. You've yet to earn the right to wear the vibrant imperial yellows or the most intricate phoenix embroideries, but you have your own small selection of pastel silks and delicate floral motifs. As Xiao Mai tugs and adjusts, you feel the weight of your station pressing down, almost literally. Your waist is cinched, your posture corrected, your every movement constrained by the fabric of your life. Your first duty, always, is to present yourself, to be ready. Ready for what? For anything. For a surprise visit from a high-ranking concubine to inspect your chamber, for a sudden summons to the Empress Dowager's court, or, for a chance, a very small chance, to be noticed by the Emperor. This is where the core of your existence lies. Not in politics, not in poetry, but in the realm of the physical, the romantic, and the intimate. The historical records, so often sterile and formal, paint a picture of this aspect of palace life that is both strangely clinical and intensely personal. The emperor's nightly activities were not left to chance or whim. They were a matter of state, managed with a meticulous, almost bizarre, formality that you're about to experience firsthand. So, let's talk about the romance of the imperial bedroom, because it's not what you're imagining. It's a very different type of romance and physical interaction. You don't get to wander into his chambers unannounced, you don't get to simply catch his eye across a crowded garden and share a stolen kiss. The system is designed to be efficient, to ensure the production of heirs, and to control the influence of any single woman. Each night, after his dinner, the emperor would retire to his chambers. A eunuch, often the head of the Bureau of Protocol, would present him with a tray of polished bone plaques. Each plaque was inscribed with the name of a different concubine. The emperor would choose one, often by simply turning it over to show his selection. Your heart, a small, caged bird in your chest, still flutters with the sheer hope that your name, that little piece of ivory, will be chosen. It's a lottery ticket for a life of luxury and influence, and the odds are astronomically against you. If your name is chosen, the entire palace springs into motion. You are summoned, but not to walk. Oh no. A eunuch comes to your chamber, and you are stripped of your finery, wrapped in a large, simple cloak, and then, carried. Yes, you are carried. Like a package, not a person. The eunuchs bear you on their backs, a silent, gliding procession through the shadowy, lamplit corridors of the palace. The idea, so historians say, was to prevent any assassin from hiding a dagger in your hair or in the folds of your elaborate robes. For a moment, you're just a bundle, a delivery, and all the pomp and circumstance of your station falls away. You're simply a vessel, transported to the emperor's private quarters. Upon arrival, the eunuchs unwrap you at the foot of the emperor's bed. It's a moment of utter vulnerability, a weird mix of formality and nakedness. You're meant to crawl into the bed from the foot, not to get in the normal way. The whole thing is incredibly ritualized. It's not about spontaneous desire or flirtation, it's a ceremonial duty. Historians still argue whether this rigid process was purely for security, or if it was also a psychological tool, a way to emphasize the emperor's ultimate power and dehumanize the act just enough to prevent emotional entanglement. For a concubine, this is the moment. This is your chance. It's not just about pleasing him physically, but also about leaving an impression, saying something clever, or simply being so enchanting that he remembers your name the next day. A quirky tidbit: some sources suggest concubines would practice the art of conversation in front of mirrors, meticulously planning what they would say if they were ever summoned. After the encounter, the protocol continues. The eunuchs would wait outside the emperor's chambers, and at a prearranged time, one of them would call out, "It is time." The emperor could either ignore the call or signal for the concubine to be carried away. If he didn't signal, the eunuch would call out 2 more times. After the 3rd call, the eunuch would enter, retrieve you, and you would be carried back to your own chambers. Then, the most peculiar ritual of all. The head eunuch would ask the emperor if he wished the act to be recorded for the purpose of potential fatherhood. If the emperor said yes, the date and your name would be written down. If he said no, a certain measure would be taken. This practice, known as the suppression of conception, was a regular part of the nightly routine and a stark reminder that even in the most intimate moments, you were still just a part of the imperial machine. So, in the space of a single night, your life's purpose is fulfilled and then, just as quickly, put on hold. Your day is shaped by this possibility, this hope. The rest of your time is filled with quiet, almost mundane activities. You might spend hours in your private courtyard, practicing calligraphy or painting. Your life, you see, is not just a tightrope walk, it's a tightrope walk with a complex and rigidly enforced set of signposts, each one denoting a specific rank and a specific degree of worth. You've heard whispered stories from the other concubines, tales of the women who inhabit the upper echelons of this gilded cage, but for now, you occupy the very bottom rungs. To truly understand your precarious position, you need to understand the ladder you're trying to climb. This isn't just a group of women, it's a meticulously organized system, the imperial harem. And it's not for the faint of heart. At the very, very top, above everyone else, is the empress. She is the official wife of the emperor, chosen for her noble lineage and family connections, not for love or beauty. She is the mother of the nation, the head of the inner court, and her authority, second only to the emperor and the empress dowager, is absolute. She doesn't just manage the emperor's household, she commands it. Her quarters are the most lavish, her entourage the largest, and her power, though largely ceremonial in a modern sense, is very, very real. She is the sun to your distant, flickering star. You will see her, perhaps, from afar, a blur of golden robes and jade ornaments, but you will never, ever, approach her without being summoned. To cross her is to invite a fate you can't possibly imagine. Just below her are the consorts, often 4 in number, each with their own specific title like noble consort or virtuous consort. These women are the Empress's closest rivals and allies, powerful and influential in their own right. They are often the mothers of the Emperor's children, and their status is almost entirely dependent on the influence and standing of their sons. Imagine a royal family today, but instead of just one heir, there are dozens, each vying for the top spot, and their mothers are the silent, but fierce, generals in that war. They live in quarters that rival small palaces themselves, commanding their own armies of servants and eunuchs. The silks they wear are finer, the jade they adorn themselves with is purer, and their food is prepared by dedicated chefs, not just the general kitchen staff. Next, you have a series of ranks, each one a slight step down from the last, a continuous cascade of titles that separates one concubine from another, even if they live just a few courtyards apart. There are the secondary consorts, the concubines, and so on, each level with a specific number of women allotted to it by imperial law. For example, a mainstream historical fact is that during the Qing dynasty, the imperial harem was officially divided into 8 ranks, starting with the empress and descending to the first-class female attendants. The number of women permitted at each level was strictly limited, meaning a promotion was not just a matter of favor, but also of an open position. It was a vicious game of musical chairs, only with much higher stakes. As a lower-ranking concubine, your life is all about the art of survival. Your room is smaller, but still luxurious by any outside standard. You have your personal maid, maybe 2, but not the small platoon of servants a consort would have. You eat from the general palace kitchen, which, while producing feasts that would make a modern 5-star chef weep, is a far cry from the delicate, personalized meals enjoyed by the higher ranks. The fabrics you're allowed to wear, the hairstyles you can fashion, even the color of your lip rouge, it's all dictated by your rank. This obsessive attention to detail, this meticulous stratification of every single aspect of your existence, is designed to constantly remind you of your place. A quirky tidbit of history, some lower-ranking concubines were not even allowed to be carried to the emperor's chambers on a eunuch's back. They had to walk, a silent, public humiliation that marked them as less significant. It was a way of saying, you are not a precious package, you are simply a means to an end. The most significant difference, of course, is your access to the emperor. The higher you are, the more likely you are to be chosen. The empress, of course, has a standing invitation, but for everyone else, it's a matter of probability. A consort might be chosen once every few nights, a concubine maybe once a week if she's lucky. You, at your current rank, might be chosen once a month, once every few months, or perhaps, never. This is the truth that hangs over your every waking moment. You could spend your entire life here, surrounded by unthinkable wealth, and never once be summoned. The hope, the terrifying, all-consuming hope, is what drives you. It's what makes you practice your calligraphy until your hand aches and memorize poetry until your head swims. Every moment is a rehearsal for a performance that might never happen. The competition among the women is both silent and brutal. It's not the kind of catfighting you see in movies, full of dramatic insults and flung wine goblets. It's far more insidious. It's a look exchanged in the garden, a whispered word to a eunuch, a carefully orchestrated accident that results in a rival's favorite jade earring being shattered. Jealousy is a corrosive force, and within these walls, it is everywhere. A concubine who falls out of favor might find her servants suddenly gone, her food tasteless, and her living quarters growing inexplicably cold. It's a world where you have no friends, only temporary allies and sworn enemies. Historians still debate the true number of women in the harem at any given time, ranging from a few hundred to several thousand, depending on the dynasty and the emperor's personal inclinations. But what is not debated is the sheer psychological toll of this existence. Imagine living your entire life under constant scrutiny, your every action judged, your every word potentially twisted and used against you. The only goal is to rise, and the only way to rise is through one man's favor. It's a very specific kind of romance, isn't it? The romance of absolute dependence. The ultimate game of pick me, choose me, love me, but with 1,000 other women all playing for the same grand prize, a tiny bit of power, a fleeting moment of security. So, you go about your day, moving through the courtyards, your posture straight, your gaze low, constantly aware of the invisible ranks of the women around you. The consorts in their rich, silken robes, their hair adorned with pearls and kingfisher feathers. The high-ranking concubines, their footsteps more confident, their smiles more assured. And you are a part of the chorus, not yet a soloist. Your life is a beautiful, intricate prison, and the key is held by a man you may only meet in a moment of ritualized intimacy. The only way out is up, and every single day is a test of your patience, your cunning, and your will to survive. With the cold, hard reality of the hierarchy settled in your mind, you turn your attention to the one thing you can truly control, your own appearance. In this world, your beauty isn't just a personal asset, it's a political tool, a silent language spoken in carefully applied pigments and precisely arranged hairpins. Every concubine understands that to rise, you must first shine. The standards of beauty here are both demanding and deeply specific, a universe away from the effortless, woke up like this look of today. Here, every aspect of your physical form is a project, a constant, ongoing effort. The first step in your daily ritual is the bath, but it's not just a quick shower. It's a therapeutic treatment. You sink into a wooden tub filled with water infused with fragrant petals and skin-softening herbs. The maidservants, a small team dedicated solely to your person, scrub your back with loofahs made from a type of dried gourd. The water itself, you're told, has been boiled with ginseng and ginger to improve circulation and warm your inner chi. This isn't a moment of relaxation, it's a moment of preparation. You are a canvas, and your daily life is a slow, meticulous act of painting. Once dried and wrapped in a soft silk robe, the real work begins. Your maids bring out a tray of porcelain pots and carved jade jars, each one containing a different potion or powder. Your complexion is the most important feature. The ideal of beauty here is a skin tone as pale and unblemished as a pearl. This is a mainstream historical fact. A pale complexion was not only a sign of beauty but also a marker of social class, proving you were a woman of leisure who didn't have to toil under the sun in the fields. To achieve this, you use a white lead powder, a substance that would send a modern dermatologist running for the hills. It gives your skin an unnaturally ethereal glow, smoothing over imperfections and creating a flawless, moon-like sheen. This is followed by rouge, a crimson paste made from crushed petals, applied to the cheeks in 2 small, circular patches, and a vermilion paste for the lips, painted into a delicate, heart-shaped pout. The final touch for your face. Your eyebrows. They must be shaped into thin, delicate arches, often using a powder made from burnt willow charcoal to make them dark and well-defined. But a concubine's beauty is not just about the face. It's a head-to-toe performance. Your hair, for instance, is a testament to your patience. It's washed with rice water and special herbal infusions to keep it long, black, and lustrous. Then comes the styling. The maids spend hours arranging it into intricate, cloud-like buns, held in place with delicate combs and decorated with elaborate hairpins. These pins are not just accessories, they are status symbols, often carved from jade or inlaid with precious stones and kingfisher feathers. Even the way you walk is a part of this beauty standard. Your waist must be slender, your movements graceful and reserved. There are even rumors, whispered in hushed tones, about concubines who would wear special belts to cinch their waists ever tighter, a sacrifice for the ideal of a tiny, perfect figure. Then there's the foot binding. Historians still debate the origins of this practice, but it's a shocking and painful reality for many women in this era. For some concubines, particularly those from noble families, this process would have begun when they were just girls. You would have endured years of pain to achieve a foot so small and delicate it could fit inside a teacup. The end result, a 3-inch lotus foot, was considered the ultimate in female beauty, a symbol of your status and an indication that you were utterly, completely a woman of the inner court, forever removed from the world of physical labor. Walking on these feet is not a natural act, it's a slow, unsteady shuffle, a deliberate sway that is itself considered elegant. For a moment, you can't help but think of the irony. You are surrounded by boundless space, the magnificent courtyards and sprawling gardens of the palace, yet your world is physically confined to tiny, painful steps. And of course, there are the more unusual beauty treatments, the ones that defy modern common sense. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen I mentioned? Well, that's just a mild example. A quirky tidbit is the use of a paste made from ground, sun-dried pearls to smooth skin and lighten blemishes. It was believed that the luminescent quality of the pearl would be transferred to the skin itself. Then there was the practice of chewing dried cloves to sweeten one's breath before an imperial audience. It was believed that a concubine's every sensory detail should be pleasing to the emperor, right down to the scent of her breath. It's an obsessive, all-encompassing pursuit of perfection, and every aspect of your life is geared towards it. For you, in your daily routine, this means constant vigilance. You must protect your skin from the sun, even within the confines of the palace. You must spend hours with your maids, arranging your hair and applying your makeup. You must endure the pain in your feet, never showing a grimace or a sign of discomfort. Your very existence is a testament to discipline, to the idea that true beauty is not natural but cultivated, a work of art that requires endless labor. It's exhausting, but you know that every effort, every small sacrifice, is a silent plea to the emperor, a way of saying, "Look at me. I have done all this for you. I am worthy of your favor." And so, you smile faintly at your reflection in the polished bronze mirror, a perfect, painted mask of serene perfection, and you wait. You begin to understand the next, more dangerous stage of the game. For all the talk of silk robes and painted faces, your true power doesn't lie in your appearance. It lies in your mind. The physical act of being chosen is merely the entry point. Once you have the emperor's ear, for however brief a moment, you have the opportunity to become something more than a beautiful object. You have the chance to become an influencer, a whisperer of secrets, a quiet shaper of a kingdom. The most potent form of influence, of course, comes with a child, specifically a son. The birth of a male heir instantly elevates a concubine's status, moving her up the ranks and guaranteeing a level of security she could never have dreamed of otherwise. The mother of the crown prince, for instance, becomes a figure of immense power, a woman who holds the future of the dynasty in her hands. This is why the birth of a boy in the palace is cause for monumental celebration. A mainstream historical fact is that this event could single-handedly change the political landscape of the entire court. It's no longer just about you, it's about your son and the legacy you are building through him. Your personal influence becomes magnified 100-fold as ministers and officials, jockeying for future favor, begin to pay you court, sending lavish gifts and seeking your counsel on everything from succession to appointments. But what if you haven't given birth? What if you're still waiting for that one chance? Then your power lies in more subtle forms. One of the most important roles you play is that of an informant. The emperor, surrounded by sycophantic ministers and guarded eunuchs, lives in a bubble. He relies on you, and the other concubines, to provide him with unfiltered information about what's really happening inside the palace and out. A casual comment about the empress's new dress, a whispered complaint about a eunuch's cruelty, a passing observation about a minister's disloyalty, these small pieces of information, when pieced together, can form a crucial mosaic of court politics. You are his eyes and ears in a world designed to hide the truth from him. Your influence also extends through the carefully orchestrated alliances you form. The palace is a labyrinth of power dynamics. You might seek the favor of a high-ranking eunuch, for instance, offering him gifts and favors in exchange for him putting your name forward on the selection plaque more often, or for him to relay a specific message to the emperor at just the right moment. The eunuchs, who have no family and no children of their own, are masters of this game. You might also form a fragile alliance with a high-ranking concubine, pledging loyalty to her in exchange for her patronage and protection from the more malicious rivals. These are not friendships in the modern sense, they are business relationships, fragile and constantly being renegotiated. Historians still debate the true extent of a concubine's power, often pointing out that it was an unofficial, backdoor influence that is difficult to document in official histories. But there are undeniable examples of women who rose from humble beginnings to become the most powerful people in the empire. Empress Dowager Cixi, a mainstream historical fact, is the ultimate example. She entered the Forbidden City as a low-ranking concubine and, through sheer force of will, political cunning, and the birth of a son, rose to rule China for almost 50 years. She was the power behind the throne, the silent puppet master pulling the strings of emperors and ministers alike. Her story is a cautionary tale and an inspiration, a testament to what a woman in this world could achieve if she played the game better than anyone else. The most fascinating part of this unofficial influence is its subtle, almost artistic nature. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that concubines would use poetry and music not just for entertainment but as a means of communication. A concubine might compose a poem with a double meaning, a verse that seems to be about a beautiful flower but is secretly a warning about a disloyal official. Or she might play a song on her lute that contains a specific phrase that only she and the emperor understand, a way of conveying a secret message without anyone else being the wiser. The more you learn about the palace, the more you realize that the most powerful words are not shouted from the rooftops but whispered in the quiet intimacy of a private chamber. And so, you walk through the palace, your perfect, painted face hiding a mind that is now a chessboard of political calculations. You observe the way the emperor interacts with his ministers, you listen to the whispers of the eunuchs, and you study the expressions on the faces of the other concubines. The game has changed. It is no longer about being beautiful. It is about being useful. It is about becoming indispensable, a source of comfort and counsel that the emperor cannot do without. Your survival now depends not on the number of times your name is chosen, but on the quality of the time you spend with him and the lasting impression you leave. You are no longer just a concubine. You are a player in the most high-stakes game of all. With your mind now buzzing with the subtle strategies of court politics, you're pulled back to the more immediate, and often more suffocating, reality of your daily life. Because for all the high-stakes games you play, most of your existence is governed by a dizzying array of rules, rituals, and routines. This isn't a life of grand dramas and whispered conspiracies every minute of the day. It's a life of constant, almost numbing, attention to detail. Every single thing you do, from the way you walk to the way you hold a teacup, is a performance. And the stage is always set. First, there is the matter of etiquette. It's a language far more complex than any you've ever learned. When you walk through a courtyard, your head must remain level, your gaze lowered, and your steps a series of small, graceful movements. You do not run. You do not hurry. To do so would be to show a lack of decorum, a sign of panic or desperation. You must be as serene and unruffled as a still pond, even when your mind is racing. When you speak to a high-ranking concubine, a consort, or God forbid, the Empress herself, you must address her with the correct title and keep your voice soft and respectful. You never, ever interrupt. To cross a high-ranking woman's path without bowing is an offense, and a serious one. A mainstream historical fact is that the Forbidden City had an entire administrative body, the Bureau of Protocol and Ceremonies, dedicated solely to enforcing these rules. They were the silent, judgmental eyes of the palace, and you knew, without a doubt, that someone was always watching. Your day is a rigid, unbending schedule. After your morning rituals and your daily meal, a luxurious but often solitary affair, your time is filled with study and practice. This is not for fun, it is a vital part of your training. You spend hours practicing calligraphy, your hand moving with disciplined precision as you trace the intricate characters of the Chinese script. You might take up the study of poetry, memorizing and composing verses that can be used for flattery or subtle communication. You also learn to play a musical instrument, perhaps the guqin or the pipa, your fingers flying across the strings in an effort to master a melody that might one day enchant the emperor. It's all part of the package, the perfect woman, a masterpiece of culture as well as beauty. These quiet, studious hours also serve another purpose, they fill the endless, vacant stretches of time. Because the most brutal part of your daily life is not the competition or the danger, but the soul-crushing boredom. You are a woman of immense leisure, but that leisure is a gilded cage. You cannot leave your quarters without permission. You cannot visit other courtyards without a specific reason. You are, in essence, a prisoner. This lack of freedom and privacy is a constant weight. Even when you are alone in your room, you are not truly alone. Your maidservants are always there, silent shadows who watch your every move, their loyalty often divided between you and some higher authority. There is a sense of being constantly on display, of never truly being able to let your guard down. It is in these moments of quiet solitude, when you are simply sitting and staring out at the meticulously manicured gardens, that the weight of your situation truly hits you. The utter silence is deafening. There are, however, small pleasures. The simple delight of a fresh pot of jasmine tea. The satisfying crunch of a perfectly cooked pear. A moment of quiet laughter with your most trusted maidservant over a stray cat that has wandered into the courtyard. These are the moments you cling to, the small oases of genuine feeling in a desert of artifice and performance. A quirky tidbit, some concubines would secretly train small birds to perch on their fingers, a quiet defiance of the rigid rules and a private act of simple, personal joy. This was a tiny secret, a minor rebellion, but it was enough to remind you that you were still a person, not just a doll in a golden cage. Historians still debate whether these rules were truly about decorum or simply another way to exert control, to keep the women of the harem docile and compliant. The sheer number of regulations suggests that the intention was to strip away any sense of individuality, to mold every woman into a specific, predictable shape. You were not just a concubine, you were a puzzle piece, designed to fit into a grand and intricate mosaic, and any piece that didn't fit was discarded. And so you spend your days, living a life of structured elegance and internal turmoil. You bow, you speak softly, you practice your instruments, and you wait. You are a flawless, beautiful machine, powered by hope and fueled by the ever-present, terrifying knowledge that one small misstep could send you plummeting from your gilded cage and into a fate far worse than obscurity. As you navigate the stifling world of palace protocol, you learn that your salvation often comes in two forms, the exquisite and the ephemeral. For all the strictness and boredom, your life as a concubine is a constant feast for the senses, a symphony of luxurious fabrics, fragrant teas, and culinary wonders that most of the world could only dream of. These aren't just pleasures, they are tools. Every meal, every outfit, every carefully spoken word is a chance to show your status, to express your value, and to, most importantly, win favor. Let's start with the food. Imperial cuisine is a spectacle, a theatrical production designed to please the eye as much as the palate. A mainstream historical fact is that the emperor's daily meals could consist of as many as 100 different dishes, each one prepared by a specialized chef. As a concubine, you won't get 100 dishes, but your meals are still a far cry from anything you've ever known. The food arrives from the imperial kitchens, carried by a procession of eunuchs. The platters are lacquered wood or fine porcelain, and the dishes are miniature works of art. A meticulously carved radish in the shape of a swan, a tiny, steamed bun shaped like a persimmon, a perfectly golden fried fish with delicate scales of flaked almonds. Your taste buds are introduced to a dizzying array of flavors, the subtle sweetness of a lychee and ginger soup, the deep savory notes of a braised duck, and the vibrant, unexpected tang of fermented tofu. This is food as a privilege, a sign that you are not just fed, but nourished on a higher plane of existence. And then there is the fashion. The robes you wear are not just clothes, they are an extension of your rank and a canvas for artistry. While you might not be allowed to wear the vibrant imperial yellow reserved for the emperor and empress, your robes are no less magnificent. They are crafted from the finest silks and satins, so light they feel like liquid on your skin. They are often embroidered with intricate floral motifs or auspicious symbols. Dragons and phoenixes, though, are strictly off-limits to all but the highest ranks. A quirky tidbit, the layering of these robes was a form of silent communication. The outer layer might be a simple, elegant silk, but as you moved, you would catch a flash of a vibrant, embroidered layer beneath, a quiet flash of your personal wealth and status. The most beautiful robes are not for comfort, they are for effect, and every fold and drape is meant to draw the eye and whisper a story about your position in the palace. But all the fine food and beautiful clothes are just props in the most important performance of all, the art of flattery. This is a skill you must master, for it is often the only tool you have to forge a genuine connection with the emperor. It's not about shouting, "You're so handsome, my lord," from the rooftop. That would be childish. It's far more subtle and dangerous. Flattery is a high-wire act of observation, of reading the emperor's mood and speaking to his deepest insecurities and desires. Did he seem stressed during the morning court? You might casually mention how much you admire his calm and wisdom in the face of such pressure. Did he express a preference for a particular type of poetry? You would spend the next week in your chambers, memorizing every line of it. This is not lying, it's a form of active listening and emotional intelligence, and it is exhausting. You learn to become a human mirror, reflecting back the best parts of the man who holds your fate in his hands. You find out what makes him laugh, what brings him peace, and what he truly values. You remember that he loves the scent of jasmine, and so you wear a light perfume with a hint of it. You recall that he once mentioned a beautiful poem, and so, during a quiet moment, you recite it for him. This is not an act of deception, it is an act of creation, of building a private world of comfort and understanding in the midst of a public stage of power and ceremony. And if you are good at it, if you are genuinely insightful, you become more than a beautiful face. You become a confidant, a source of solace. Historians still debate whether these lavish displays were meant for pleasure or were primarily a show of power, a way to demonstrate the emperor's immense wealth and control over his subjects. But for you, sitting in your chambers, eating a delicately prepared meal and admiring the intricate embroidery on your sleeves, it's both. The luxury is real, the beauty is undeniable. But the constant effort, the unending performance, the ever-present need to say and do the right thing to secure your future, that is just as real. And that, my friend, is what a life of food, fashion, and flattery truly feels like inside the walls of the forbidden city. The gilded cage, you've come to learn, has its own unique set of hidden thorns. For all the luxury and the endless performance, your life is also a constant struggle against the physical and emotional toll that this world inflicts. Beneath the perfect porcelain skin and the serene mask of your beauty, there is a body and a mind under immense and unrelenting strain. This is the part of the story you won't find on a silk scroll, the darker, unspoken truth of sickness and sorrow. Let's begin with the physical. Remember that beautiful, pale lead powder you apply every morning? Well, that beautiful sheen comes with a hefty price tag. Over time, the lead seeps into your skin and your bloodstream, causing everything from chronic pain and fatigue to more serious ailments. You might find yourself with a constant headache, a persistent metallic taste in your mouth, or a feeling of listlessness you can't quite shake. It's a slow-acting poison, a silent betrayer that undermines your health in the very pursuit of beauty. You are, in a strange twist of irony, literally poisoning yourself to be more appealing. Beyond the makeup, your sedentary, confined lifestyle takes its own toll. You are expected to be graceful and delicate, not strong and robust. There is very little room for physical activity. The gardens are vast, but you are not allowed to simply roam free. Your every walk is a deliberate, ritualized act, not an invigorating stroll. This lack of exercise, combined with a diet that, while luxurious, is often lacking in certain vitamins and minerals, leads to a host of ailments. The lack of fresh air and sunlight, trapped in the inner courts, leaves you prone to bone weakness and a general state of fragile health. And if you were ever to become pregnant, the dangers would multiply tenfold. The palace has physicians, of course, but their knowledge is limited by the science of the time. Childbirth is a perilous journey, and a mainstream historical fact is that mortality rates for both mother and child were tragically high, even within the imperial family. The pressure to produce a male heir is a stressor in and of itself, and the fear of a difficult birth, a stillborn child, or even your own death in labor, hangs over every concubine like a dark cloud. But perhaps the most insidious, most dangerous hardship is the one you can't see, the sorrow of the mind. You are surrounded by hundreds of women, yet you have no friends. Your every conversation is a careful game of strategy, and every smile could be a dagger in disguise. The sheer loneliness of this existence is a psychological burden that is impossible to shake. You have no true confidants, no one to whom you can confess your fears or your hopes without fear of being betrayed. You are constantly on guard, and that level of sustained vigilance is utterly exhausting. The competition, the lack of freedom, and the constant fear of falling out of favor all combine to create a perfect storm of anxiety and depression. You are a woman with no agency, no control over her own destiny, and that feeling of powerlessness is a corrosive force. You might find yourself having sleepless nights, your mind replaying every word you said to the emperor, dissecting his every look for a sign of approval or disapproval. Some concubines, it is said, would simply wither away from a broken heart, a spirit crushed by the indifference of the man who held their entire world in his hands. And in a world with no understanding of modern mental health, the ways in which women coped were often bizarre and ineffective. A quirky tidbit: some concubines would consume a paste made from ground, dried lotus flowers, believing it would calm their minds and ease their sadness. It was a placebo, of course, but it was all they had. Other women would turn to ancient superstitions, performing quiet, secret rituals in their chambers, hoping to secure good fortune and a moment of peace. Historians still debate the true prevalence of mental illness among concubines, as the official records rarely mention it, preferring to speak of illness in general terms or simply note a woman fell out of favor. But the quiet moments, the whispers, the poetry filled with longing and melancholy, these are the clues that tell the real story. The story of a woman trapped in a magnificent prison, with a heart and a soul that are slowly, painfully eroding. The sorrow of a life lived in constant performance, with no one to ever see the real you, to ever truly know you. And as you lie in bed at night, staring up at the intricate carvings on your canopy, you feel it, the weight of it all, pressing down, a heavy, silent presence in the darkness. In a world defined by its hardships, your greatest moments of opportunity are also your greatest acts of performance. Sickness and sorrow are a constant undercurrent, but the surface of your life is a shimmering illusion of art and pleasure. And nowhere is that illusion more meticulously crafted than in the delicate, intricate art of seduction. This isn't a game of grand gestures, it's a ballet of subtlety, a quiet ritual of intellect, emotion, and, yes, physical intimacy. Your first tool in this delicate dance is not your body, but your mind. The emperor, a man burdened by the weight of an entire empire, is likely tired of political maneuvering and forced ceremony. Your job is to be an escape, a source of solace and intellectual stimulation. This is where your long hours of practicing calligraphy and memorizing poetry come into play. A mainstream historical fact is that many emperors were renowned scholars and poets themselves, and they prized intellect and artistry in their consorts. You might choose to compose a poem that subtly references a shared experience, or you might invite him to your chambers to show him a beautifully painted scroll. It's an act of intellectual flattery, a way of saying, I see you as a man of wisdom and taste, not just a ruler. It forges a bond that is more lasting than mere physical attraction. Then there is music. You spend hours practicing on your instrument, perhaps a gentle, calming guqin or a vibrant, expressive pipa. This isn't just a hobby. It's a form of nonverbal communication. You might play a melody that is known to be the emperor's favorite, a tune that reminds him of his childhood or a moment of triumph. The music can express emotions that you are forbidden from speaking aloud, longing, devotion, even a hint of sadness that might appeal to his compassionate side. This is a very real form of seduction, a quiet, acoustic spell cast to soothe his soul and make him forget the burdens of his throne, if only for a few moments. But when a physical encounter does occur, it is transformed from a rigid ritual into a moment of pure, focused artistry. Remember the strange formality of being carried to his chambers, wrapped in a simple cloak. That formality is meant to be stripped away, to be replaced by a deeper, more personal connection. Your skin, so meticulously powdered and protected from the sun, is now meant to be a canvas of sensation. Your movements, so constrained by palace protocol, now become a graceful, uninhibited dance. You use every tool at your disposal, the scent of your perfumed hair, the silkiness of your skin, the quiet, carefully chosen words you whisper in his ear. There are certain traditions and beliefs that have, over time, been woven into this intricate tapestry. A quirky tidbit: some concubines would anoint their bodies with a special herbal oil believed to enhance attraction, an ancient form of perfume. The preparation for the encounter was a ritual in itself, designed to heighten the senses and create an atmosphere of intimate tranquility. It was about creating an environment where the emperor could feel truly relaxed and at peace, away from the constant pressure of his life. Historians still debate the extent to which these rituals were truly about pleasure versus political control, but for the concubine, it was all about one thing: connection. This was your one chance to bridge the chasm between your two worlds, your small, isolated existence and his immense, lonely one. The physical intimacy was an opportunity to be more than a body. It was a chance to be a sanctuary. The whispers, the touches, the unspoken understanding, these were the things that could truly capture a man's heart, even a man who had everything. And so, you learn to become a master of all of it. You are a poet, a musician, a confidant, a master of a fleeting intimacy. You walk the tightrope between being a person and being a performance, knowing that a single misstep could mean the loss of everything. The art of seduction is not about conquest, it's about invitation. It's about creating a space where the emperor feels seen, understood, and at ease, if only for a single, fleeting night. And in doing so, you secure your future, your status, and your very survival within the walls of the Forbidden City. The art of seduction, you've discovered, is a delicate dance on a knife's edge. But beneath the polished surface of grace and charm lies a world of raw emotion, jealousy, rage, and a kind of desperate passion that can only exist in a place where stakes are so high. This is the darker side of the Forbidden City, the shadow realm of scandal and betrayal, where a whispered lie can be more deadly than a dagger. The most dangerous, and most whispered about, sin within these walls is a love that dares to reach beyond the emperor. You are a prisoner, and your heart is, by imperial decree, the property of one man. To seek affection elsewhere is not just a breach of etiquette, it is an act of treason punishable by death. The thought is both terrifying and, in its own way, alluring. To have a connection, a single moment of genuine, uncomplicated feeling with another person in this sea of artifice. It's a fantasy you dare not even think about for too long. But the palace eunuchs, so often the silent shadows, are also a repository of secrets. They see everything. A simple, compassionate look from a young eunuch could be mistaken for an illicit affair, and a shared poem with an imperial guard could be seen as a deadly betrayal. The punishment for such an act is swift and absolute, and it serves as a constant, cold reminder that your body and your heart are not your own. But what truly fuels the fires of intrigue is not forbidden love, but open hatred. The competition for the emperor's favor is a zero-sum game. When one woman rises, another must fall, and the rivalries are a thing of legend. The stories are passed down in hushed tones, tales of women who would stop at nothing to destroy their rivals. A rival's beautiful gown might be subtly stained with a rare, undetectable acid. A favorite eunuch might be secretly bribed to spread rumors about a woman's disloyalty. Or, most chillingly, an innocent act could be framed as a deadly plot. Remember that story about the concubine who trained a bird? A malicious rival could accuse her of using it to send secret messages, an accusation that would lead to her swift downfall. A mainstream historical fact, though one often told with dramatic embellishments, is the rivalry between Empress Lu and consort Qi during the Han Dynasty. After the death of the emperor, the empress was said to have gone to extreme lengths to punish her rival, a woman who had been the emperor's favorite. While the precise details of her revenge are far too grim to be spoken of in your quiet room, the legend of their bitter feud serves as a chilling example of the kind of retribution that was possible when a woman's power was absolute and her jealousy boundless. Their story is a powerful, cautionary tale that echoes through the corridors of the Forbidden City, a reminder that a woman scorned in this world is a force of unimaginable destruction. This kind of betrayal could also come in the form of quiet, insidious sabotage. A quirky tidbit: some concubines would use ancient superstitions and rituals as a form of revenge. They might secretly place a small, cursed effigy of a rival under their bed, believing that it would bring them misfortune. Or they might use a specific, almost invisible poison on a rival's hair comb or a piece of jewelry, causing a slow, mysterious illness that the imperial doctors would never be able to diagnose. The belief in curses and dark magic was very real in this era, and in a world where you had no official power, these were the unofficial weapons you could wield. Historians still debate the veracity of many of these dramatic accounts, as they were often used as political propaganda to justify the downfall of a powerful woman or to elevate another. But whether they are true or not, the fact that they exist in the collective memory of the palace tells you everything you need to know. They are a reflection of the intense psychological pressure, the loneliness, and the absolute lack of trust that defined life here. You are constantly on guard, knowing that any woman you share a moment of laughter with could, in the next breath, be plotting your downfall. So you live a life of practiced serenity, of quiet smiles and reserved greetings. But inside, you are always watching, always listening, always ready to defend yourself against a blow you can never see coming. The world of forbidden loves and brutal betrayals is not something you read about in storybooks, it is the air you breathe, a constant, low-level poison that keeps you perpetually on edge. And as you lie down to sleep at night, you remember that every woman in this palace is not just a rival for the Emperor's love, but a potential enemy who could, in a moment of jealousy, turn your gilded life into a nightmare. In this world of bitter rivalry and constant betrayal, there is only one true currency, one thing that protects you from a whispered lie or a secret poison, the Emperor's favor. It is a fickle, terrifying, and utterly essential thing. You have seen how quickly it can be won with a perfectly played song or a clever piece of poetry. But you also know that it can be lost just as quickly, like a fragile flame extinguished by a sudden gust of wind. The relentless pursuit of this favor, and the crushing anxiety of its potential loss, is the quiet storm at the very center of your life. The Emperor's attention is a resource you must constantly fight for. He is the sun, and you are just one of many flowers turning your face towards his light. You've heard the stories of concubines who were once the apple of his eye, only to be cast aside for a new, younger woman who just entered the palace, their names fading from memory as swiftly as they were learned. A mainstream historical fact is that throughout different dynasties, new concubines were often brought into the palace with a chilling regularity, each one a fresh face and a new potential rival. Their arrival is a tremor, a quiet earthquake that sends a shockwave of fear through the harem, and a sudden coldness to your heart. So, how do you hold on to something so fleeting? How do you maintain your position when you know, deep down, that you are replaceable? The first, most obvious way is to transcend physical beauty. As a concubine ages, her youthful bloom may fade, but her mind and her spirit do not have to. This is where your intellectual pursuits become more than just a performance, they become a lifeline. You must become the Emperor's confidant, his source of comfort, the one person he can speak to about the burdens of his life without fear of judgment. You might share a deep philosophical text you've been reading, or offer a wise piece of advice about a troublesome minister. You stop being a novelty and start being an asset, a trusted source of wisdom and peace in a world that offers him very little of either. Another crucial strategy is the one you learned early on, alliances. Now, as you fight to maintain your position, your alliances with powerful eunuchs and ministers become more important than ever. You might secure a promise from the head eunuch to always speak well of you to the Emperor, or you might subtly support a minister who is loyal to your cause. These alliances are like an intricate safety net, catching you if you should stumble. They are a sign that you are not just a woman to be chosen for a night, but a player in a larger game, a woman with influence that extends beyond the bedroom. But the most effective, and most lasting, way to win this game is to give the Emperor a son. A mainstream historical fact is that a concubine's status, and her future security, were almost entirely dependent on whether she gave birth to a male heir. If you bear a son, you are no longer just a concubine, you are the mother of a potential future emperor. Your value is no longer tied to a fleeting emotion but to the very continuity of the imperial dynasty. Your son is your ultimate protection, and your worth, and by extension your power, grows in direct proportion to his. There are also more subtle, almost superstitious, ways to maintain favor. A quirky tidbit: some concubines would carry a small piece of carved jade on their person, a personal charm believed to attract and retain the Emperor's attention. The jade, a stone so valued it was a symbol of purity and immortality, was seen as a way to subtly influence the Emperor's mind and make him think of them more often. These were not public acts of magic, but quiet, personal beliefs, a way to feel some small sense of control in a world where you had none. Historians still debate the true level of emotional attachment an emperor felt for his concubines. Were these relationships based on genuine affection, or were they simply a political necessity, a ritualized act of procreation and power? For you, however, the question is a moot point. Whether it's love or political convenience, you live your life as if it's both. The anxiety of losing favor is a constant weight, a silent alarm that goes off in your mind every time a new woman enters the palace, every time the emperor seems to be paying a little less attention to you. You are a sailor on a vast, unpredictable sea, and the emperor's favor is the only wind in your sails. And so you fight, you scheme, you charm, and you pray that the wind does not shift and leave you stranded. In the high-stakes game of imperial favor, all the quiet strategizing, the delicate flattery, and the endless pursuit of beauty ultimately lead to one single, momentous goal: childbirth. This is the ultimate prize, the final checkmate on the chessboard of the Forbidden City. For a concubine, a pregnancy is not just a biological event, it is a political event of seismic proportions, a moment that can elevate you from obscurity to a position of unassailable power. This is the ultimate gamble, and it can change your entire life in an instant. The moment you realize you are pregnant, the world around you shifts. You are no longer just a concubine. You are a vessel, a precious carrier of imperial blood. The other women, your rivals, suddenly treat you with a chilling mixture of reverence and intense jealousy. The hierarchy, for a moment, bends for you. Your quarters are given new guards, your meals are scrutinized for any sign of poison, and you are lavished with special tonics and nutritious foods. It is a mainstream historical fact that a pregnant concubine's daily allowance of silk, tea, and other luxuries would increase dramatically. You are no longer just a woman, you are the hope of a dynasty. The months that follow are a blur of rituals and rest. You are cared for with a level of attention and opulence that makes your former life seem simple. But beneath the layers of silk and comfort lies a new kind of anxiety. The pressure is immense. You are not just carrying a baby, you are carrying a future, and a dynasty's legacy. The old rivalries flare up, but now they are more dangerous than ever, for they are directed not at you, but at the life within you. You hear whispers of magical curses and dark omens, and you find yourself clinging to any superstition that promises protection. And then comes the day of the birth. It is a moment of pure, terrifying focus. You are surrounded by midwives and physicians, and the air is thick with the scent of herbs and steaming water. The emperor himself might be present, or he might wait in an adjacent chamber, a symbol of his investment and the world's breathless anticipation. But for all the high-stakes ceremony, the act itself is primal and dangerous, a raw struggle between life and death. The palace records of the time show how many children, both male and female, died in infancy. This is a mainstream historical fact that hangs over the entire process like a dark shadow. When the cry of a newborn child echoes through the room, the tension breaks, and the entire palace holds its breath. But the most important moment is yet to come. Is it a boy? Or is it a girl? If it is a girl, the disappointment is a palpable, heavy silence. You are cared for, of course, but your status remains unchanged. You have failed to produce the most valuable asset. But if it is a boy, a son, the relief and joy are so immense they feel like an explosion. Eunuchs race through the palace, their voices shouting the news, and the entire harem bows down to you, for in that moment, you are the most powerful woman in the Forbidden City. You have just given the emperor his most precious gift, a piece of his immortality. Your rank is instantly elevated. You are given a new, more prestigious title, and your son is given a title of his own. The power you craved, the influence you schemed for, is no longer a possibility, it is a reality. The other concubines, who once looked at you with disdain, now come to you with gifts and requests, hoping to secure your patronage. Ministers and officials, sensing your rising power, will pay you court, sending you lavish presents and seeking your opinion on matters of state. Your son is your ultimate weapon, your most valuable asset, and your security for the rest of your life. A quirky tidbit: after the birth of a male heir, some concubines would quietly perform a ritual of their own. They would place a small, perfectly round river stone in their son's crib, believing that the smooth, resilient nature of the stone would be transferred to the baby, making him strong and unbreakable. It was a small act of maternal love in a world where affection was often intertwined with political strategy. This is where the story of the concubine truly comes to a head. All the elegance, all the rivalry, all the loneliness, it was all a means to this end. You are no longer an object of desire, you are the mother of a legacy. Your life's purpose has been fulfilled, and the story of your son is now the story of your own power. Historians still debate the true level of affection concubines felt for their children versus the children's value as a political asset. But for you, holding your newborn son in your arms, the distinction is blurred. You love him fiercely, of course, but that love is inextricably linked to the immense power he represents. And as you look at his small face, you understand that your fate is now intertwined with his, and your future is now secured, all thanks to this tiny, powerful life. With the birth of your son, your world has changed, and you now see the palace with a new, sharper eye. You are no longer just a player, you are a force to be reckoned with. And as you step into your newfound power, you realize that you must now navigate a different, and perhaps even more complex, world, the world of the eunuchs. They are the silent, ever-present shadows of the Forbidden City, the men who hold more power than any concubine could ever dream of, and who can, with a single, whispered word, make or break your future. You see them everywhere. Their hair is meticulously coiffed, their robes are often of fine silk, and their faces are unreadable masks of politeness and deference. They are the gears and cogs of the imperial machine, a vast army of men who manage every aspect of the inner court, from the most mundane to the most sacred. A mainstream historical fact is that during certain dynasties, there were as many as 70,000 eunuchs in the Forbidden City and the surrounding administrative buildings. They were the ones who prepared your meals, guarded your gates, and, most importantly, managed the emperor's schedule. They were, in essence, the masters of the court, for without them, nothing would get done. But they were not just servants. They were a separate, distinct class of people with their own complex hierarchy, their own political rivalries, and their own immense power. They were, by their very nature, without lineage. They could not have children, and so their loyalty was, in theory, devoted entirely to the emperor and the dynasty. This made them uniquely suited for positions of trust and authority within the inner court, as they could not use their power to establish a powerful family to rival the imperial one. Their only path to wealth and influence was through the patronage of the emperor or the women of the harem. This is what made them both your most valuable allies and your most dangerous enemies. A powerful eunuch, such as the head of the Bureau of Protocol, was a kingmaker. He was the one who presented the plaques to the emperor each night. He was the one who could speak to the emperor at a moment of vulnerability, subtly praising a concubine or whispering a rumor about a rival. You are now a mother, but your son is still a child. A eunuch's influence, however, is a constant, steady hum of power that can either support you or undermine you. The most powerful eunuchs often became immensely wealthy, accumulating vast fortunes in bribes and gifts. They lived in their own lavish quarters, and their power was such that even high-ranking ministers would bow down to them. Their lives were also filled with a unique and chilling reality. A quirky tidbit: to earn a position in the imperial palace, a man had to be castrated, and the severed parts were often preserved in a jar, a ritual known as preserving the treasure. This was done so that if the eunuch ever died, he could be buried with his treasure and be considered a whole man in the afterlife. It was a dark, symbolic act that underscored their unique, liminal position in the world, neither entirely men nor entirely women. It was a constant reminder of the price they paid for their access to power. The relationship between a concubine and a eunuch was a delicate dance of give and take. You would offer gifts, kindness, and loyalty, and in return, he might offer you information, protection, and a chance to rise. But you could never truly trust them. They were masters of deception, and their loyalties were often a shifting, temporary thing. This is a game you must play with extreme caution, always aware that the eunuch who helps you up the ladder could, in a moment of pique or betrayal, send you tumbling back down. Historians still debate whether the eunuch's power was a necessary evil for the stability of the inner court or a corrupting force that ultimately led to the downfall of many dynasties. Their influence was often immense, and their ability to manipulate events from the shadows was a source of both fascination and terror. They were the eyes and ears of the palace, the silent masters of protocol, and the secret keepers of the deepest court intrigues. And so, as you hold your son, you know that your power is not absolute. It is a fragile, beautiful thing that must be protected, and the only way to protect it is to understand the shadows that surround you. The eunuchs are not just the men who serve you. They are a force of nature, and you must learn to navigate their unpredictable currents if you and your son are to survive and thrive in this beautiful, terrifying world. All the rules, all the rituals, all the rivalries and alliances, they all exist for one purpose, to prepare you for the inevitable. The emperor is the sun, and your life orbits around his. But what happens when the sun sets for the last time? What happens when the man who holds your fate in his hands closes his eyes forever? The death of the emperor is the most significant, most terrifying, and most liberating event in a concubine's life. It is the moment when all the power you've built, all the friendships you've faked, and all the love you've given are put to the ultimate test. Your fate, in this moment, is a matter of luck and leverage. There is no one-size-fits-all ending. Instead, your life after the emperor's death falls into one of three very distinct categories, each one a testament to how well you played the game. First, there are the fortunate. This is you, if you were lucky enough to have given birth to a male heir who is now the new emperor. All of your power, all of your security, is now fully realized. You are no longer a concubine, you are a woman of immense influence and respect, often granted the title of Empress Dowager. You will live in a magnificent palace, a place of your own, where the new emperor will come to seek your counsel. You will have a new army of servants and eunuchs who bow to you, and your word will be law within the inner court. A mainstream historical fact is that many Empress Dowagers, through their sons' power, became the de facto rulers of China, making decisions that affected the entire empire. This is the ultimate dream, the true fairy tale ending to a life of immense hardship and uncertainty. You have won. The game is over, and you are the queen. Next, there are the comfortable. If you were a concubine who had no son, but were a favorite of the late emperor, your fate would be a relatively kind one. You would be allowed to retire, to live out the rest of your days in a quiet, secluded part of the palace or in a beautiful monastery outside the Forbidden City. This is a life of serene contemplation, a place to finally, truly, relax. The constant pressure is gone. The endless rituals and rivalries are a thing of the past. You will still be cared for and respected, but your influence, your power, is gone forever. It is a quiet twilight, a gentle and unceremonious end to a life that was lived in a constant, breathless sprint. And then, there are the unfortunate. If you had no son and were not a favorite, your fate is a cold and lonely one. You are, in a sense, a burden, a reminder of the last emperor that the new ruler and his family have no use for. You might be sent to live in a dark, neglected part of the palace, your servants reduced to a bare minimum, your food becoming plain and simple. You are effectively exiled, living a life of utter obscurity and loneliness, surrounded by the ghosts of your past. In the worst, and most brutal, cases, some concubines who had no power were forced to commit suicide, a practice that, though rare, did occur in certain eras. A mainstream historical fact is that this gruesome practice of burial with the deceased was a horrifying reality for a few unlucky women, a final act of devotion to an emperor who may not have even remembered their name. Historians still debate the true frequency of these more brutal fates, as official records were often sanitized to present a more favorable picture of the imperial court. But the stories, whispered from one generation to the next, tell of a far more complex and dangerous reality. The new Empress Dowager, the mother of the new emperor, held all the power over the fate of her son's former concubines. She could be a compassionate ruler, or a vindictive rival, and her decisions determined whether a woman would live a life of comfort or a life of quiet despair. A quirky tidbit is that some concubines, upon the death of the emperor, would have to perform a small, symbolic ritual, leaving a favorite piece of jewelry or a personal token at his grave. This was a final, silent farewell, a moment to say goodbye not just to the man, but to the life and the hope that he represented. And so, as you stand in the courtyard, you know that the ticking of the palace clocks is not just marking the passage of the day. It is counting down to a moment that will change everything. Every political move you make, every alliance you forge, every act of flattery and every act of seduction, is a gamble against the inevitable. You are playing for the highest of all stakes, the fate of your own life after the emperor is gone. And as the sun sets, casting long, peaceful shadows across the stone and the silk, you feel a deep, silent terror in your heart. You are a concubine, and your future is a mystery, a beautiful, terrifying, and completely uncertain thing. You've now walked the courtyards, felt the weight of the silk robes, and understood the terrifying stakes of this life. You've seen the boredom, the betrayal, and the fleeting joy. With all of this knowledge in your mind, it's time to take a step back and separate the truth from the fiction, to pull away the dramatic, Hollywood-fueled myths and look at the more nuanced, and often more chilling, reality. Because the story of the concubine is not the one you thought it was. It's far more complex and far less glamorous. The first major myth is that the harem was a place of endless, vicious catfights and jealous rage. While, as you've experienced, rivalry and betrayal were a real and present danger, most of a concubine's life was not a constant drama. It was a life of quiet boredom and meticulous routine. The days were filled with study, practice, and waiting. The real battles were not fought with words, but with silent glances and subtle power plays. The most dangerous women were not the ones who screamed, but the ones who smiled while they planned your downfall. The idea that women were constantly pulling each other's hair and shouting insults is a modern, Western fabrication, an easy way to make a complex reality digestible for an audience. A mainstream historical fact is that the rules of decorum were so strict that public outbursts of emotion were almost unheard of. It would be a sure sign of a lack of self-control and would result in swift punishment. Another common misconception is that concubines were nothing more than sex slaves, their entire existence defined by their physical relationship with the emperor. But as you now know, their lives were far more than that. The most successful concubines were not just beautiful, they were brilliant. They were scholars, poets, artists, and confidants. The physical act was simply the means of entry. Once they were in the inner court, their real work began, the work of influencing an emperor, raising a future ruler, and navigating a labyrinth of political intrigue. The relationships between emperors and their concubines were often emotional and intellectual as well as physical. The greatest tool a concubine had was not her body, but her mind. You've already seen how that played out, and you know that in a world without freedom, the mind becomes a powerful and dangerous weapon. A quirky tidbit, a common myth from some of the more sensationalist historical accounts is that certain concubines, once they fell from favor, were forced to eat only a specific kind of gruel and were never allowed to see the sun. While a lonely and isolated life was a reality for some, this specific detail is likely an exaggeration, a way to paint a more dramatic picture of their misery. The reality of a life of quiet exile was likely just as brutal, but in a more subtle, psychologically crushing way. Historians still debate the popular fascination with the scandalous aspects of the harem, arguing that it often overshadows the more important, and more common, stories of power, artistry, and survival. Finally, there's the myth that all concubines were perpetually young and beautiful. The reality, as you've come to learn, is that a concubine's power could actually grow with age. As her physical beauty faded, her wisdom, her influence, and her relationships with her son and the rest of the court would strengthen. An older concubine, particularly the mother of a powerful son, was a force to be reckoned with. Her power was no longer tied to a fleeting physical appearance, but to the deep, unshakable foundations of a dynasty. This is why a concubine's greatest ambition was not to be the most beautiful woman, but to be the mother of the next emperor. So as you reflect on your journey, you realize that the story is not one of helpless women trapped in a man's world. It's the story of clever, resilient women who, in a world that offered them no direct power, learned to become masters of indirect influence. They were poets, spies, mothers, and master strategists. They used their beauty as a key, and their minds as a weapon. And in doing so, they not only survived, they shaped a dynasty. The truth is far more interesting than the myths, and the women you have come to know in your quiet journey were far, far more than you ever imagined them to be. You've now walked through the reality of the Forbidden City, a world both beautiful and brutal, but your journey doesn't end here. The walls of the imperial palace may have crumbled and faded with time, but the legacy of the concubine system echoes through Chinese culture and history, a silent testament to the women who lived, loved, and fought within those walls. Their lives, once confined and hidden, have left an indelible mark on art, politics, and the very fabric of society. First, consider the cultural legacy. The concubines were not just political pawns, they were often highly educated artists and poets. Their work, once shared only in quiet, private moments with the emperor, has since become a part of the vast collection of Chinese art and literature. The poems filled with longing and melancholy, the intricate paintings of birds and flowers, the delicate calligraphy, these were the products of a life lived in isolation and emotional turmoil, and they continue to be studied and admired today. A mainstream historical fact is that the concubine system, by gathering so many intelligent and artistic women in one place, inadvertently created a unique and productive environment for cultural expression that would not have existed otherwise. The stories of their rivalries and their triumphs continue to be retold in films, television shows, and novels, shaping the way people think about this era. The political legacy is perhaps the most profound. For centuries, the inner court of the imperial palace was a major, if unofficial, center of political power. The rise and fall of concubines, their alliances with eunuchs and ministers, and the success of their sons all had a direct impact on dynastic succession. The concubine system was a constant source of both stability and upheaval, and a careful study of a dynasty's history often reveals that the major turning points were not decided in the halls of government, but in the private chambers of a concubine. Historians still debate the ethical implications of the concubine system, weighing its cultural contributions and political influence against its human cost, the personal freedom and happiness of thousands of women sacrificed for the sake of an empire. And what of the social legacy? You might think that in modern China, the concept of a concubine is a thing of the distant past, but the echoes remain. The obsession with a pale complexion, the value placed on a woman's ability to be graceful and reserved, the pressure to produce a male heir, these are all, in some form, subtle ripples from a system that existed for thousands of years. A quirky tidbit is the concept of ernai, which, in modern slang, refers to a man's mistress, a social phenomenon that many scholars believe is a direct, if twisted, echo of the ancient concubine system, a way for wealthy men to showcase their power and status through their relationships with multiple women. The historical concept of the concubine is not just a forgotten chapter in a history book, it is a part of the cultural and social DNA of a civilization, a constant, quiet hum that you can still hear if you listen closely enough. So as you come to the end of this journey, you realize that the women of the Forbidden City were more than just the subjects of a historical footnote. They were survivors, strategists, and artists. They navigated a world of immense danger and incredible luxury, and in doing so, they left a mark that would last for centuries. Their lives were a paradox, a strange blend of power and powerlessness, of luxury and loneliness, and of duty and desire. They remind us that history is not just about the kings and the emperors, but also about the hidden lives of the people who shaped them, the silent forces that made a world turn. You can close your eyes now, let the sounds of the palace fade, the soft rustle of silk, the distant chime of a bell, the quiet whisper of the wind through the eaves of the ancient buildings, let the imagery gently drift away from your mind, the jade ornaments, the intricate embroideries, the serene faces. You have traveled so far tonight, and now it is time to come back home, to the comfort of your own bed, and to the quiet rest that you so richly deserve. The stories of the concubines are now a part of your dreams, a beautiful, sad, and powerful memory that will stay with you, even as you sleep.